And welcome at
Yay!
yet. Why would you do this? Every single time.
Because it irritates the shit out of you.
I
Well,
was resolved to be quiet because you usually wait for me to start saying something idiotic and then you hit record. So I was just going to pass on
I
this one.
I know. Welcome to BeerThralls presents Beer Protocol. I'm James, and I'm drinking a Starbucks Frappuccino because reasons.
Uh, I'm Jacob. Today I am drinking the Black Ox. Point that at the camera. The Black Ox by
Old
my
Ox Brewery.
brain is shutting down on this
Old
one.
Ox
By Old
Brewery.
Ox Brewing in Virginia. It's a really solid rye porter.
Dude, the Old Ox is amazing.
I am drinking Oh, I'm Matt, and I'm drinking Bullet Bourbon Cash Strength.
Nice.
It is
And
really good.
gentlemen, cheers.
Cheers.
Clink.
Tink.
Clink. So today we're going to talk about Jonathan Blaze, the Ghost Rider. He is one of the star characters of the Defenders affiliation, along with Doctor Strange. I think is a lot of people are really taking note of these characters, and I think Ghost Rider kind of fulfills a role similar to other characters, but he does it in a unique way that I think deserves to get him to your tabletop. As someone who's had to play against him a couple of times.
So,
So
On fire? Is
he's
that how he does it?
yes. So he's a seven damage medium move, even though he's on a motorcycle. Apparently, he's running out of gas.
Oh, we'll get to that. Also,
Um,
don't forget Ghost Rider's on a large base.
he is on a large base.
So Ghost Rider's base, and this is really important for Marvel Crisis Protocols because the stick is always the same size. Do not be fooled by that medium. He can cover a lot of ground simply because his base is so big. He gets that medium stick plus his base size for movement. As like a comparison point, I don't have TTS open, but let's look at Crossbones with his
Unpainted.
base size. Let me James, shut up. Let's look at Red Skull, who isn't primed white and will probably pop out a little bit better against my background.
Meh.
Red Skull with his base versus I forgot this bastard's name. The one Corvus
Ghost.
Glaive.
Oh, Corvus Glaive. Okay.
So Corvus Glaive with his base size, looking at the comparison, a medium move, which is what both of these models have, is going to be a little different. Because you're going to get the medium movement stick plus their base size of movement to play with.
There you go.
Thanks, James.
This is a small base, and this is Ghost Rider's base. So, for everyone in
So
the
that
podcast,
medium,
those are sizes.
that medium is actually quite a bit of base movement, and Ghost Rider has even more movement, which we'll get up to.
Yeah. He is size 3, and he is threat 5, which means he is going to be a powerhouse on the table.
Yes, threat 5 typically means you are above and beyond, like just even like a standard strong combatant. Like Ghost Rider is someone you're going to try to anchor a list around, which I think he's actually really well suited for. So his first off, fun fact about Ghost Rider: he does not have a physical attack. He is all energy or mystic. That is actually kind of rare in this game. Physical attacks are so common. There's actually far more characters with all physical attacks than characters with no physical attacks.
I mean, it makes
Also,
sense.
yeah, on a similar point, Ghost Rider's defenses are 3 physical, 4 energy, and 4 mystic. Physical damage is Ghost Rider's weak spot. And even then, he's not actually weak defensively, he's just average.
It's still pretty awesome. He has got some really good defenses. The large base with the medium move, the 7 health. He's a powerhouse on the
Yep.
table. So what's his first
But
attack?
Well, so the reason I think the physical defense being his lowest is relevant is just physical attacks are pretty by I don't have the exact numbers, but I think physical attacks are by a good margin the most common attacks in the game.
But still, a 3 is an average, so it's
3 is
still
average.
pretty good.
His first attack is the Chains of Damnation, a range 3, power 6, cost 0 attack. Power 6 is right up there for tied for the hardest hitting cost 0 attacks in the game. So Ghost Rider did not come to play. After this attack is resolved, the character gains power, this character gains power equal to the damage dealt. Pretty standard. With 6 dice, Ghost Rider's be making a decent amount of power off of this, and most likely. Then, on a wild, he can inflict Hex. After the attack is resolved, the target character gains the Hex special condition, which changes so that that character cannot explode their dice with the critical effect, the exclamation point.
This is the most amazing cost 0 attack in the game.
Um, I don't know if I'd go that far. I think it's really good.
I still think this is the best 0 attack in the game.
The reason I hesitate to say that this is, I actually, if I had to name the best cost 0 attack in the game, I'm not sure what I would put up there. I think Shuri's would be in my top 3 for sure. Simply because of the sheer usefulness of that ability and the amount of things it does. This attack hits hard, generates good power, and can potentially inflict a really nasty status condition. The reason I don't want to say it's the best or it's above average, but I don't want to necessarily heap too much praise, is all of that is based on dice math. Okay. Which, with the low amount of dice in this game, it is incredibly swingy. And if you try to pin your strategy on this, I think you're just going to be disappointed more often than not.
Still, with 6 dice, you are more than likely going to get the Hex off.
Oh, let me clarify. Hex is a really powerful status condition. If your opponent doesn't roll any exclamation points to begin with, then it does nothing.
That is true.
So Hex is powerful, but only when your opponent actually rolls exclamation points. Otherwise, you're just like, okay.
For those people that don't know, Hex basically says you can't explode your exclamation points.
Yep. Really, really powerful because those exploding critical effects are a big part of why the dice math can get swingy. So Ghost Rider can potentially cap your opponent's damage and defense rolls in a way that isn't very common. The most common place you're going to find that ability as Matt goes full, like, Eldritch Horror down there, flickering in and out of existence. The Defender's affiliation with Doctor Strange can get access to Hex on all of their attacks potentially, which is even more interesting since Ghost Rider could pay the extra power to trigger the Defender's affiliation bonus and get a guaranteed Hex on any of his attacks, which makes the wild on this one less relevant.
Yeah, let's talk about that with the Flames of Hell.
All right. The Flames of Hell is another energy attack. Beam 3, so he's got an area effect attack. Very cool. 5 dice for the attack, cost 2. If this attack deals any damage, after this attack is resolved, the target character gains the Incinerate special condition. Incinerate says that when the character would make a defense roll, they subtract 1 dice from their total before rolling. Incinerate is really strong. I think Incinerate is a stronger special condition than Hex simply because Incinerate always applies. It's always relevant. It doesn't matter what your opponent does. In fact, you choose when Incinerate applies because you are the one attacking. So
I like this. I don't see the Beam 3 is a good thing. I don't see it being a lot of use. I still would say use the attack to attack a single person. If you get a second person underneath the beam, great. But still treat it as like a single person attack because you want the Incinerate on characters, especially since it's a beam 3 and then Chains of Damnation is a 3.
Yeah, all of Ghost Rider's attacks are range 3. Yeah, so that is his sweet spot.
You can make him lose a defensive dice and then hit him with Chains of Damnation and just do even more damage.
Yep. Or because it is cost 2 for the beam, I think it's perfectly valid to do Chains of Damnation to get the power, maybe apply Hex, and then hit him with Flames of Hell. I think that's also a perfectly valid sequence because you have pretty good odds of making enough power in addition with your automatic 1 generated per turn to use Flames of Hell. And if you can just tag your opponent with as much Incinerate as possible, that forces them to either spend one of their character's 2 actions to get rid of it, or just deal with it until they eventually go down.
Yep.
Since dice pools are on average 3 for an average defense or 4 for a good defense, losing even a single die can make a big impact.
Yeah.
So Incinerate's a good status condition. Throw that out as much as you can. Finally, we get to Ghost Rider's showstopper of a special move, the Penance Stare. It is a mystical attack, range 3, 5 dice for attack, cost 5 power. James, would you be excited for a 5 cost attack that only has 5 dice?
You know, if it had no other extra text, absolutely not. That's ridiculous.
The first bit of extra text. Add dice to the attack roll equal to the amount of power the target character has to a maximum of 5.
Oh,
Hey,
Hulk.
hey, have you been stacking resources on somebody? Ghost Rider says knock it off. And then he incinerates the shit out of you. And then, instead of gaining power for the damage dealt by this attack, the target character loses 1 power for each
Oh.
damage dealt.
Okay, so if you have 5 power, just do this attack. Holy
This attack is
God.
such a swing. So this attack is amazing. It goes after your opponent's most beefed up, most powerful potential pieces, or the pieces who could have the biggest turn, and smacks them down.
Either that or right after you flipped.
This is actually really notable too, because this is potentially a really strong move to use against someone who just recovered from dazed, is now wounded, but hasn't had a chance to activate or use their power.
Yep.
So Ghost Rider can effectively hunt characters who have just flipped to wounded, which is kind of a wild thing because no one else will specifically go after wounded characters like that.
I mean,
Um,
it's anything that goes, hey, I'm passing out power beforehand. I'm, like Magneto. I destroy something, pass out power. Hey, look at that. I think that Wakanda is going to do their little tricky stuff, and Killmonger is going to run up there and do some horrible, horrible things to my characters. How
Yeah.
much power is he sitting on?
Now, this isn't going to help you necessarily if someone like Killmonger has relatively only low power, like maybe only 2 on him, and then generates a lot with their basic attack and then goes into a hard-hitting attack, because you can't interrupt your opponent's turn with Penance Stare. That'd be amazing. But
That'd be
still
awesome.
really, really good. It's mystical, which is interesting. There's not a lot of mystical attacks in the game, even like Doctor Strange and Ghost Rider and MODOK are like the reliable ones with
So
mystical attacks right now.
yeah, so
All of which, by the way, are 5-cost characters.
So somebody was asking, like, well, how do you deal with like MODOK? And it's like, oh, Ghost Rider, because MODOK
How so?
MODOK wants to send a ton of power. He wants to constantly be using. He wants to have basically 6 power on him, to do multiple blades, multiple attacks, get his special abilities off. That's his cards. Um, this is a good way just to drop that down. Same thing with Red Skull, who wants to send a lot of power. To pass off doing Hail Hydra, like, this is a great way just to stop that.
A couple of the things I'd like to point out about Ghost Rider's suite of attacks. Now, we have, in fact, gotten through all of his attacks. So remember how big Ghost Rider's base is. So range 3 off of Ghost Rider's big-ass base is almost... I don't have the 6 in front of me. I would not be surprised if it's almost range 4 from a normal character base.
Oh, no, it's definitely more. It's probably like 4.5.
So Ghost Rider has a deceptively large range on all of his attacks and his abilities, as we'll see in a second. So there's just a big bubble of the table that Ghost Rider could just kind of be like, nah, this is in my area of influence.
No, his base is about 2 inches long, so that would be almost after a
Remember,
move a 5.
I can't stress this enough, ever, ever, ever. Inches do not correlate to range in this game. The
Yes.
difference between range 1 and range 2 is not an inch. The difference between range 2 and range 3 is not an inch. The difference between range 2 and range 4 is not 2 inches.
Yes. So it's about another 2. It's about another 2 inches on the attack.
Stop using inches.
I'm just gonna
I
keep
will
pissing you
drive
off.
to your house and slap you upside the head.
I'm just gonna keep doing it to piss you off.
Matt, I think you had a question while I try not to kill James with my mind.
I do. So this concept of, and I've always had difficulty understanding this, even when we played, War Machine and all that. How the base size, if they're both at the same point on a line, where it's tangent across both, how does the base size interact with the fact of more distance or not?
Ooh, I know this one.
James.
So like in
Yes, you in the back.
So in War Machine, you always measure from the front of the base to the front of the base, or the back of the base to the back of the base, right?
Yes.
In MCP, you don't. So you measure using the sticks. The sticks actually slot onto the base, and you move it along the stick, and then you put the back of the base on the end of the stick.
Oh, that makes sense now for movement. Got
You're
it.
you're
Yes.
welcome. You're welcome, noob.
So then my same question goes with these powers. Then, if you're not moving him, how's it different?
So
We're kind of counting in the movement.
Oh, okay.
effects in this game are measured um, with just within. There is no complete within. So as long as any part of the base is within the distance measured by the stick, by putting the stick against the base of one model and just kind of sweeping it, if any part of another model's base is in that area, they're considered to be within range.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
Ghost Rider having a bigger base compared to someone with a smaller base, they're using the exact same distance measuring stick. So simply because Ghost Rider's base is bigger, if you picture the measuring stick as the radius of a circle, you are drawing a greater. The circle that Ghost Rider creates is bigger than the one by a normal sized character.
Okay.
His
So
arc is
that
going to
that
be a
that
wider arc.
that makes sense when you throw in the movement part, like you said. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Noob corner over.
Welcome.
No, that is it's one of the reasons in this game why really big based characters with short movement like Black Dwarf or Hulk, everyone's like, it's gonna take them forever to get anywhere. Not really. They're
Yeah,
actually faster than they look.
yeah,
There's kind of a reason they were given the shortest movement stick. It's a big balance thing. Because heck, their base size is almost the same distance as the short movement stick.
yeah. So now this is where it gets fun.
Oh, sorry. One more dirty combo I wanted to bring up with just Ghost Rider's attacks. So say, for example, your opponent, Ghost Rider doesn't need to move. He's where he needs to be. He has that huge bubble we were talking about, his area of influence. Let's say Ghost Rider's first action is Chains of Damnation. 6 dice. Hit him. Make power. Let's say your opponent got hit. So Ghost Rider gains power, and your opponent gains power because of the rule that whenever you're damaged by an enemy effect, you gain power. And you're like, cool, Penance Stare. Because now you've given your opponent power to buff Penance Stare's damage simply by damaging them with an attack. Again, it's really basic. I'm sure I'm not original in seeing or thinking of that, but that's really good internal synergy with the way Ghost Rider's bigger attack works. I don't have to stop talking. I can see if James withers up and dies.
God damn it! All right, so we're gonna get to his powers. His first power is Hell on Wheels, for a cost 3, which is on average what you get from Chains of Damnation. This character,
That's going to vary wildly based on your opponent's
I
defense,
hate
your
you
luck with
so much. On
dice.
average, you're going to get 3. So,
No, you're not.
yes, you are in 6. Okay. Anyway,
That's
so
fine. We'll go with
You'll
it.
you'll get on average 3 hits total, and then your opponent gets to roll defense, James.
hmm hmm
And
So
with let's see, with 4 dice, what's the average defense roll? I'd say maybe 2 hits. So your 6 dice versus an opponent's 4 dice defense, you get on average 1 hit that's unblocked. So you generate 1 power.
Well, but no, it's the average defense is 3 and not 4, so it'll swing it up just ever so slightly.
Yeah, this is why averages in this game's dice system are really dumb. They don't work like d6s.
Are you done?
No.
Okay. So, Hell on Wheels. So you can do like a Chain of Damnations. You do Hell on Wheels for 3 costs. Advance this character long. This superpower can only be used once per turn.
Really important. This is not an
Phrasing.
action.
It's
Not
not
an
an
action.
action. So,
How many inches is that?
Long is drastically bigger than medium,
yeah, and
which, as we've already talked about,
considering,
was pretty far given his
yeah,
base size.
it's like this but his base size, that basically means you're moving across the entire table. So like, don't
Oh,
move,
Yeah.
just attack something, then do Hell's on Wheel, and then attack something else, like on the complete other end of the table.
I think this power is really, really important for stuff we'll see actually with the rest of Ghost Rider's powers. On its own,
It's still
I'll talk
awesome.
about this more. I do have opinions. This is good. This is a good power, but it may not be used for what you're thinking. I don't think Ghost Rider's a skirmish character.
Okay, we'll get to that. So
Yeah.
let's talk about Wicked's Judgment.
No, you did good.
Okay.
Wicked's Judgment costs 2 power. After an attack made by a character within 3 of this character is resolved, if that attack targeted another allied character, This character may use a superpower. So real quick, since that was a lot of this and that,
That's a lot of coding terms.
if your opponent is within range 3 of Ghost Rider and they attack another allied character other than Ghost Rider, so your opponent attacks someone other than Ghost Rider. Really important, the person they're attacking does not have to be within range 3 of Ghost Rider.
Wait, after an attack made by this character within 3 of this
A
character.
character within 3. I kept putting in this as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
made by a. Okay, you're right. I peeped
the
this there.
opponent has to be within range 3, but your opponent's target can be anywhere.
Yes.
Okay, then the attacking character suffers 1 damage for each exclamation point, each critical in its attack roll. This is cool, and this is a big part of Ghost Rider's character. Before we talk about it, though, I want to talk about the next power. Just to really quick summarize. This is a passive, Spirit of Vengeance. After an attack made by an enemy character that is within range 3 of this character is resolved, if that attack targeted another allied character, this character gains 1 power. To put it in English,
Son of a gun.
if your opponent is within 3 of Ghost Rider and they attack someone other than Ghost Rider gets a power. And because timing of this might differ a little bit since your opponent's turn. Technically, your opponent gets to determine the timing of powers, I believe, on their turn. I'd have to check for a specific rules example, but you might be able to use that power to immediately use the Wicked's Judgment ability. That would be the one timing thing that would come up. So, with these 2 rules, what that sort of combines is Ghost Rider sits on the table. His big bubble of range 3, all of his effects are range 3. So you just got to remember range 3 with Ghost Rider. He's got a big base, so his range 3 is big. If your opponent attacks someone other than Ghost Rider immediately gets a power, and Ghost Rider can potentially deal direct retaliation damage based on how many criticals they roll. Now, it's interesting. Wicked's Judgment is really interesting to me because you play it after they resolve the attack. As in, you know exactly how much damage Wicked's Judgment will do when you activate it. There's no dice rolling, there's no guessing, it's just automatic. So your opponent gets the interesting choice because your opponent doesn't know how hard Wicked's Judgment is going to hit when they commit to the attack. So your opponent could be like, there's a decent chance here that I can try to finish off this injured character with Ghost Rider nearby. But then they roll a bunch of exclamation points. And like, I got what I wanted. Shit. As
And
Ghost
then-
Rider's just like, cool for you, buddy.
And then
Whap.
like because remember, unless they have hex on them, they get to re-roll. They get to roll more dice, which means all those exploding exclamation points could actually roll exclamation points, which means more damage. They can literally flip themselves.
This is potentially incredibly strong and can't. This is all about making bad choices for your opponent. For whoever's playing against Ghost Rider has to make choices.
Yep.
And I think, at least my answer when playing against Ghost Rider was, I have to kill Ghost Rider first.
Yeah.
Because none of these rules trigger if you attack Ghost Rider.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
you could pretty much just put them in mid or right in the center of the board, like that second line. Have all your guys just go wee across, and Ghost Rider just sitting there going, ha 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 ha, push 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 constantly.
Yeah.
I think that is Ghost Rider's role and what he really excels at.
It doesn't say
is
once
he
a turn.
is.
It doesn't say once a turn.
No,
So-
it is not once a turn.
So like if you have 4 power on you, and he goes, okay, yeah, you're gonna do Vengeance Judgment. Okay, Wicked Judgment. Yeah. Cool. I take 4 damage. I'm gonna go ahead and roll again. Oh yeah, I flipped that character. Oh, I'm dead. Like,
Yeah.
This is like, yeah, you're gonna have Ghost Rider going over to like a group of people and just being like, hey, you gonna attack my friends? Go ahead, attack my friends. Go ahead, do it.
Ghost Rider is an aggro tank. And I think that's the way he really should be played. Now, you could try to play him as a skirmisher with Hell on Wheels to move in and out of areas, but I think Hell on Wheels is somewhat more situational than it looks. Because remember, Ghost Rider has a pretty big move on his own. So Hell on Wheels might be really strong. for extra skirmishing, but it's relatively expensive.
So
And
let's
it's taking away from using pendant stare and other things. So I think Hell on Wheels is sort of your security blanket of I can get Ghost Rider wherever he needs to be in the middle of your opponent's fight.
talk about his damage side first, and then we can
He
talk
has one
about
less health. We're done.
that's all.
He has 6 stamina instead of 7.
So anyway, all right, now back to the what we can do with him. I agree ish with you on his role on the table. Um, I believe I believe he kind of wants to escort his friends up the table a little bit. Like, there's a very strong possibility that you're going to have Ghost Rider way too far out, and he's going to be way out of position. Um,
Oh, how so?
because with the medium movement, his large base, and the option to do Hell on Wheels, you're going to have people who are just going to be like the same thing with Hulk and his like Gamma Leap and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have people who do like me, and you're going to rush them out because you want to hit people with the Chains of Damnation and a pen stare, and you want to do all this cool stuff, and he's going to be without support. I really, really, really want to take him with Venom and have people target Venom. Or have people like where you have the card that says, you don't attack him, you attack me for Venom. So then he could use his Wicked's Judgment on the attack you did against
Mm-hmm.
Venom, and then Venom can counterattack.
So I want to get to Matt, and then I have 2 pairings I want to talk about.
Okay.
So Matt, go ahead.
Does everything go back to Venom?
Yes. So
Always.
everything goes back to Venom because Venom's amazing, and Iron Man sucks.
The core tenets of this podcast.
Okay.
So the 2 things I want to bring up. You bring up a really good point. Bodyguard effects are really, really potentially interesting with Ghost Rider because your opponent could be trying to like, I'm going to play it smart. I'm going to burst down Ghost Rider. Which, by the way, bursting down Ghost Rider sounds simple to say. It's not trivial. Like he doesn't have any defensive abilities on his card, but he's got 7 health, then 6, and he has 3/4/4 defenses. Like boy is sturdy. You're going to need probably either 2 amazing attacks or 3 to 4 normal attacks to wear him down, which is multiple activations between multiple characters that are all focused on this one beefy boy. Okay, so you could do Venom, use his tactic card for the bodyguard effect to get someone who's trying to play it smart and attack Ghost Rider first, and then Ghost Rider and Venom redirect that attack to Venom. Or for 2 threat and no tactic card, you take Okoye.
Yeah. No, I actually that was the other one is taking a Koye and basically just being like, no, I'll take the hit. Cool. All right, thanks.
Yep. Fun fact: Okoye does have pretty good defensive tech as a martial artist. Where if she's within range 2 of the person attacking, she gets to add blanks to her defense roll, which makes a 2-threat character way sturdier than it looks. So if Okoye is actually a little ahead of Ghost Rider and closer to the enemy, then either they attack Okoye anyway, normally, and then Ghost Rider's like, yeah, okay, you're still within 3 of me, so all of my abilities trigger. Or they attack Ghost Rider, and Okoye is like, no,
Yep.
deal with the same situation. Essentially, you get to force your opponent into a bad choices scenario, but you have control.
Yeah.
Assuming you have power to use all these abilities.
So that's I think what Hell on Wheels is it's going to be something like, you move Ghost Rider up, he does a Chains of Damnation, and then he moves back using Hell on Wheels. To try to get like
Maybe
basically a strike and then pull back until you get to the point where until he's like basically in the thick of things. I don't see him being like an assassin. I see him just being kind of like that rubber banding effect, uh, hitting things and then coming back. With also his medium movement and a large base with Hell on Wheels, He's a really good choice for grabbing objectives and running away.
So I I disagree really strongly with that for a few reasons. One, he's 5 threat. You could have a character running away from the fight if they cost 2 threat, but at 5 threat, Ghost Rider is anywhere from over a third to almost just barely a quarter of your list. Like, you did not pay that many points to bring this boy to have him on the outskirts. Like, you need him to be delivering. So doing the rubber banding with Ghost Rider, trying to protect Ghost Rider's health pool, I don't know if that makes sense.
What about taking with
Because
something like hammers?
I mean that assumes I don't know. I feel like Ghost Rider's health pool exists to protect the rest of your team. Ghost Rider is a
Okay.
security blanket that protects the rest of your team, is the way I would suggest playing him. I think Hell on Wheels is to guarantee that he's where he needs to be. Because I think Ghost Rider, what's unique about an aggro tank, his role is an aggro tank, because you would think an aggro tank would take your opponent's aggression, mitigate the damage, and just like huddle up. Ghost Rider has no damage mitigation effects inherently. So his role is to hit very hard, be very scary, and if your opponent tries to attack someone that's not him, punish them.
Hmm.
So Ghost Rider is like pure aggression, damage output, status conditions, going after your opponent's built-up model with Penance Stare.
Okay.
So having Ghost Rider not delivering 2 attacks per turn feels like you're kind of really hampering his output. And Hell on Wheels is expensive enough as well that if you're dedicating 3 each round to keep Ghost Rider out of harm's way, I feel like you're going to take a lot longer to get to Penance Stare. Which, granted, Ghost
Okay.
Rider's other abilities are relatively cheap, but if your goal is to have enough power in the bank to Penance Stare and either finish off a model that's taken a bunch of hits and is about to get their turn, or to go after a model that just flipped from dazed to wounded, Penance Stare is a really strong tool to just aggressively put them down. It kind of reminds me about tanking in Gloomhaven. A big part of Gloomhaven and mitigating damage is not putting up shields and standing there. It's murdering the thing that's going to do the most damage.
Yeah. If
Finding
you
what's the biggest threat and getting rid of it.
if you kill it, it can't attack you.
Right. The other character I really want to mention that I think emphasizes this playstyle is Doctor Strange. The affiliation leader for the Defenders affiliation has 2 incredibly powerful abilities to back up this playstyle with Ghost Rider. The first is Doctor Strange for 2 power can give a friendly model within range 3 2 extra defense dice.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want to know how hard it is to kill Ghost Rider when he has 6 defense against energy attacks and 5 against physical with 7
Yeah.
health?
Yeah.
That
Yep.
is one of the biggest reasons. Like, Ghost Rider himself doesn't have damage mitigation, but his affiliation leader of the only affiliation Ghost Rider's officially part of has damage mitigation up the ass.
Yeah, but I remember you guys saying that 10 is normally the threat, is a threat number
Mm-hmm.
kind of cap. So if you did that,
On
then you
average, mission is from 15 to 20.
Yeah. 15, 20.
so that would
Granted,
literally
you're
be
investing a lot in
okay.
2 models, so you do run the risk. But those 2 models, like Ghost Rider and Strange, are powerhouses.
I mean, I
True.
probably at that super low of a threat, I probably would not run Ghost Rider.
Yeah, Ghost Rider I think works really well. Like, if Ghost Rider is the only viable target for your opponent anyway, a lot of this doesn't matter. But if you have several other models doing work that Ghost Rider can punish them for going after, is sort of forced choices, I think he gets more interesting. The other thing I'll mention, Strange has a power that I believe, off the top of my head, I should have gotten the Strange character card out. Give me 1 second.
Doesn't their affiliation just basically says for defenders is you just change it to whatever you want
So
an attack
the
order?
affiliation bonus for the Defenders is actually probably one of the better ones of the game. Once per turn, when an allied character declares an attack, before choosing a target, they can spend a power. If they do, you can choose the type of the attack, and if it does any damage, inflict hex.
Yep.
So for 1 It's really, really strong to be able to choose the type of your attack, because that means you can always go after your opponent's lowest defense.
So you could
Ghost Rider.
also
Okay.
make flames of hell, not only incinerate but hex as well.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. That's what I was about to say.
Now
Actually,
that is before choosing a target. So I think I'd have to double check how that interacts with beam attacks. If you pay 1 power for the entire beam, and it stays the same for everything, or you pay it per individual.
Even if it's pay per individual, you
Still
guys
good.
even said use it at. You're only really going to be targeting one. If you pick up 2, cool.
Yep. Okay. So, Doctor Strange has for 2 power Hoggoth's Hoary Wisdom to add defense dice, like I already mentioned. That's super crazy good. When the only person you have to keep within range 3 for that is Ghost Rider. Like if Doctor Strange is trying to do that for the entire team at once, he'll run out of power pretty quickly. If he just has to keep one dude, Ghost Rider, alive, Doctor Strange can actually sort of parse out his energy spendage a little easier.
or the person that's bodyguarding Ghost Rider.
Yeah. And he also has somewhat more expensive, so he'll get less used less often, but he has All-Star's Refuge, which is a cost 3, and a character allied to Strange within range 2 heals 3. So Doctor Strange has +2 defense and a heal that he can just dump on Ghost Rider.
Yep.
That's good.
That's incredibly good synergy. Granted, you are spending 10 threat, and you're dedicating a lot of Doctor Strange's powers to keep Ghost Rider up. But it is kind of worth noting. Doctor Strange himself is no slouch for damage. He has a fairly interesting control effect on his basic attack, where he can push them in any direction they want if he does damage. So you can use him to shove people off control points. Ghost Rider has a lot of damage to just put people down and make them stop contesting. Between these two models, I think you have a really interesting core of a defenders list that you can add a number of other models to make things interesting and to sort of flesh out and accomplish more.
I kind of want to bring him in Guardians.
You could.
I mean, it's. I kind of want to with Guardians, especially there's so many models. You're kind of like put Ghost Rider out in the middle of it, especially if like you're doing like something like Gamma shelters or something like that. Ghost Rider can sit between 2 Gamma shelters and be perfectly fine. And now anyone who attacks it, like any of the characters, is going to be probably within 3.
Yep.
So it just becomes a cool. You're going to go ahead and roll. Um, that's 4 exclamation points. Okay, that character is probably going to die. Yeah, you're gone.
Right.
But you're taking lots of damage now.
But again, that brings up my repeated caution about counting on dice results. Is if your opponent never rolls any exclamation points, then Ghost Rider's counterattack actually just isn't relevant. Granted, that means Ghost Rider saving that power and will probably penance stare you on his next
Yeah.
turn.
No, it's like we always used to say in War Machine is give your opponents bad decisions. With Ghost Rider being within 3 of um, pretty much anything, um, you have the option just sitting on 2 power. You're constantly looking over to him, going, "Am I going to spike on this attack and possibly die?"
Yep.
Like it's the only time you really have to think about, oh God, if I do really, really well in this attack, great, I do well. At the same time, I'm going to flip. He's going to just spend 2, and
Yeah.
I'm just going to take tons of damage.
3, like I think like an absolute best case scenario would be like 3 exclamation points, so 3 damage. But
You
3
want to get
damage,
more. You want to get more. You want to get more damage than you spent on power. Now,
I don't know if that's gonna be the case very
on
often.
that's 3 plus. Um, but at
Right,
the
but
same
how many
time,
exclamation points are you rolling, Madman?
on average.
On a
So
4 dice attack, if you roll 3 or more exclamation points, you are
no,
either cursed
this is
or a luck god.
like the spiking
1 or
like
2 is going to be the average.
this is to mitigate that whole like, oh, my opponent spiked. Um, but always keeping 2 on him just in case is going to make your opponents very, very scared.
Now, is
And
the exploding exclamation marks, is that a may or a must?
Well, so it doesn't
Um,
really matter either way in this case since they're there. Even if your opponent, even I don't think it's a May ability, but
I
even
think
if
you
it
have
wasn't,
to.
it's still an exclamation point in the final roll, so it would still trigger Ghost Rider's ability.
Well, true, but if it's a may and not a must, then you could choose to try and not get more of them.
That's actually a good question. I've
But a
because
must means
this
now
is
you can possibly make it worse on yourself.
so.
True.
In the comments, if you have an answer, because I don't at the moment, put it in the
Yeah.
comments and tell
That's a
us if
level
it's
of
a.
rules esoterica I'm not
Yeah,
ready for.
it's that is a really good question, and we're gonna
Yes,
leave
a
it at
new
that
answer.
question.
Yeah.
And yeah, answer it for us. So,
Okay, one more bit of thing we need to talk about Ghost Rider
oh,
is he has a tactic card unique to Ghost Rider called Deal with the Devil. Unaffiliated, so he does not have to be in Defenders to use it. If Ghost Rider is knocked out, he's been wounded, he's been flipped, and he's knocked out again. You did 13 damage to this living skeleton man. He can spend 4 power to play this card before he's removed from the battlefield. Choose another allied character. Ghost Rider removes all special conditions, removes all damage and activated tokens, drops all objective tokens, and is placed within 1 of the chosen character. If the chosen character was healthy, flip Ghost Rider to his healthy side.
what?
Then, enemy characters within range 2 of Ghost Rider are incinerated. Then, the chosen character is knocked out.
Phoenix is reborn.
So
Oh,
essentially, you KO one of your own characters to
hmm,
res Ghost Rider.
hmm.
How many times in a game can you use that?
Just
Just once.
once.
Remember how we talked about bringing 2 Thread along for Okoye for bodyguard shenanigans? Okoye takes a little damage and you just run her to the back. And you're like, why'd you take Okoye off the battlefield?
Sorry,
I'm going to
Quay.
trade a 2-point model to fully resurrect my 5-point model.
Yeah, that's a good trade-off. That is a very, very good trade-off.
Like this card is worth bringing, even just like a Black
Threat?
Widow objective runner or just any 2-point character who's going to be out of the main fight and kind of running objectives and just using them to swap for Ghost Rider when he gets burst down.
Yeah, yeah.
It's potentially really strong. I would point out that Ultron has a similar effect where he fully resurrects himself back to his healthy side, no damage. Um, but that costs 6,
That does cost 6.
which is hard. 4 is a lot more reasonable.
Hmm.
Also worth noting is it does remove the activated token. So Ghost Rider could activate twice in a round if he activates first because he's low on health, gets taken out, and then deals with the devil to come right back.
That's insane.
It's really good. Again, like I say this as someone whose primary interaction with Ghost Rider has been on the receiving end of this Doctor Strange Ghost Rider combo, but it's strong. And I did eventually burst down Ghost Rider over like 3 rounds. So the risk of doing this combo, to be aware, I don't think it's necessarily an end all be all strategy. Heck, using Ghost Rider's movement to be a skirmisher and hit harder on the edges of the battlefield may be valid. But you run the risk of not getting enough done with the rest of your team.
Yeah.
So if you're going to dedicate 10 to 11 points, because Doctor Strange should have a really good discussion on whether he's going to bring the Soul Stone. Because yes, Doctor Strange can take the Soul Stone, not just the Time Stone.
Hmm.
Then you really need to probably consider a plan for how you're going to negotiate the rest of the scenario. So, unlike necessarily BDT, good old Big Dick Thor, this is not necessarily an auto win button. I mean, BDT wasn't either, but BDT was just such an oppressive start, your opponent could have a hard time recovering. I think this one, as a strategy, having the sort of defensive core may last 3 rounds. So it really comes
Yeah.
down to, can you, with 3 rounds of your opponent not attacking some of your pieces, get work out of them and get the objective, settle in, score points, and build up a lead.
So yeah, he's definitely a person to take.
Yep.
He's definitely
Ghost
in the
Rider.
top 10 of pretty powerful characters.
Ghost
Um,
Rider is a powerful character, I think, who has really interesting synergies with a variety of cast. across multiple affiliations. If nothing else, I think he actually has pretty consistent damage output for a 5-threat character. He has 2 status conditions he can apply, both of which are potentially really useful, but a lot of his abilities rely on dice. About the only ability he has which isn't dice dependent is gaining a power. Sorry, the only ability I feel like he has that's not somewhat dependent on your opponent or dice is inflicting incinerate with flames of hell as a beam, because that'll apply without any input from your opponent. Otherwise, your opponent has to choose not to attack Ghost Rider to trigger 2 of his abilities.
So Jake, why tease what we're going to do next week?
So we got a request to talk about affiliations and roster building. So we're going to pivot to that for a little bit. I think we're going to pause talking about individual characters, or at least until the Inhumans come out and our willpower erodes. But I think we're going to start talking about making rosters for the various affiliations, starting with everyone's favorite, tried and true, noble defenders of mankind, the Avengers. We're going to walk through sort of what an Avengers roster that we would put together looks like. We're going to try to give a shorter overview of how we got there. And hopefully that'll kind of give you an idea of what it's like to build a roster for games in Marvel Crisis Protocol.
So basically, it's going to be R10 using the Avengers, and going to explain why we did that.
Yep.
To
And whoever else we fancy.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for watching, and it's time for us to stream.
Yay, stream.
All right, game off.
Bye.